At the start of the movie, we see a mechanic working inside a garage. Suddenly, a bald stranger walks in. Without speaking a word, he forces a cloth into the mechanic's mouth. He then slices the man's legs with a blade and pours battery acid over the wounds. While torturing him, he demands, "How many people were with you that night? Who leads your crew?" This man doesn't stop there. He begins targeting entire gangs and brutally skinning people alive. One day, a tragic event changes this otherwise ordinary man into a calculated and ruthless killer. Fueled by vengeance, he starts hunting down every major gang in the city one after another. He carries out these executions so expertly that even US federal agents and the FBI can't trace him. Who is this deadly sharpshooter? And will he truly wipe out every dangerous gang in the city? Let's find out. The story continues with an American police officer being rushed to a hospital in critical condition. The city has become a playground for small and large gangs, spreading fear everywhere. Robbery, murder, kidnapping, fraud, crime is happening openly without any limits. People feel powerless in front of these groups. At the hospital, we meet Dr. Paul, a skilled surgeon. He quickly takes the injured officer into the operating room, only to realize the man is already dead. The way he died clearly shows the work of a trained and highly precise killer. After confirming this, Paul moves on to attend other emergency cases. Now we learn about Dr. Paul's personal life. He lived happily with his wife, Lucy, and their daughter, Camilla. Despite being a surgeon, he preferred a simple and peaceful lifestyle. He paid his taxes, followed the rules, and never caused trouble for anyone. But one day, everything changed, and this quiet man became the city's most feared killer. What pushed him to that point? Let's continue. It was Paul's birthday, and he started the day by gifting a watch to his daughter. He also bought a gold ring for Lucy and surprised her with it. That evening, he took his family out to a restaurant to celebrate, inviting his best friend Frank as well. While they were eating, Paul received an emergency call. An extremely critical patient had arrived at the hospital. He was told the case was almost impossible to save. As the senior surgeon on duty, Paul had no choice but to leave immediately. Before going, he asked Frank to drop Lucy and Camilla safely at home because the city had become dangerous. As they stepped out of the restaurant, Lucy told Paul, "To make this day special, I want to donate all the money I've saved in my locker to a charity." A gang informant standing nearby overheard this conversation. He recognized Paul, and now he knew exactly what Lucy had planned. He quietly takes out his phone and sends Paul's home address to his gang members. Now you can already guess what is going to happen that night. Frank drops Lucy and Camilla home and leaves, while Paul, wearing his hospital uniform, heads straight into the operating room to treat the patient. Meanwhile, Lucy and Camilla return home and start preparing dinner. Outside, the gang members begin surrounding the house one by one. Before Lucy can react, one of them storms into Camilla's room and holds her hostage at gunpoint. Lucy sees this and reaches for her phone, but another man enters and points a gun directly at her. They demand that she open her locker and hand over everything inside. Lucy has no choice but to obey. Meanwhile, the man guarding Camilla gets a twisted idea and starts harassing her inappropriately. When Lucy opens the locker, the intruders grab all the money and the key Paul had given her. As they continue harassing Camilla, she suddenly fights back. She grabs a knife from her desk and slashes at the attacker's mouth. She then throws hot water from a mug onto his face. At that moment, the other two gang members rush into the room. Before leaving, they open fire and shoot both Lucy and Camilla. Meanwhile, Paul finishes his surgery. He is devastated when he receives the news that his wife and daughter have been attacked. He races to the emergency ward and finds his wife, Lucy, already dead. However, a fellow surgeon informs him that he managed to save Camilla's life. Shortly afterward, FBI Chief Detective Ryan and Detective Jackson meet Paul. They question him about the attack and ask if he knows anything. Paul can't answer because he was at the hospital the entire time. He breaks down in tears when he sees his injured daughter. The next morning, he buries his wife and tries to return to his normal routine. Despite everything, he convinces himself that it was just a tragic incident and tries to continue living. But this is where the real story begins. Stay with the film because the calm doctor you know is about to become someone terrifying. His transformation will send chills down your spine. One day, while Paul is driving to the hospital, a beggar stops him. The beggar wipes his car windows and asks for money, but Paul ignores him. This had become a daily interruption for Paul. When he arrives at the hospital, he notices Camilla's friend, Batani, waiting. Paul leaves him there and heads to the police station to ask about the investigation. There, he stops when he sees a huge board covered with names and photos. The chart displays 100 criminals, each one on the city's most wanted list. Paul asks the officer whether any of them have been caught. The officer explains that the city has faced over 40 robberies and 12 murders recently, and these 100 suspects are linked to them. Processing all these cases will take a long time, but Paul no longer has the patience to wait, so he quietly makes a decision. He will hunt them down himself. Without another word, he walks out of the station. Outside, he spots two men assaulting a young girl. When Paul tries to stop the men, they beat him badly and run away. That night, Paul sits at home watching online tutorials about guns. He studies how weapons work and what types are commonly used in violent crimes. Motivated by what he learns, he visits a large gun store, but when he sees the heavy weapons and equipment for the first time, he becomes nervous. He is a doctor, not someone used to handling firearms. While talking to the shopkeeper about a gun, he notices a CCTV camera recording everything. He realizes that if he buys a weapon and someone is killed later, investigators will trace it back to him. So he abandons the idea, walks out of the shop, and leaves quickly. But on the way home, he thinks that if luck is on his side, a gun might come to him without needing to buy one. Soon after, a patient with a gunshot wound is rushed to the hospital. As Paul enters the operating room, a Beretta M9 slips out from under the patient's vest. Paul quietly picks it up with his foot. He gives the patient first aid, sends him to another operating theater, and hides the gun before leaving. Outside, he shoots the gun for the first time in his life. The bullet ricochets back at him, but he survives. This incident makes Paul realize that he needs proper practice. So he continues learning through tutorials and begins practicing every night. He learns how to shoot, reload, and assemble weapons. The calm doctor he once was is now handling firearms like a trained shooter. It becomes clear that his transformation is both intense and dangerous. The next day, Paul asks his friend Frank whether he knows anything about the attackers who hurt his family. Frank has no information. Paul tells him to stay with Camilla and heads out alone. Late at night, he loads his gun and drives onto the deserted streets. He believes that if the gang responsible is active, they will likely be committing robberies during the night. While searching, he spots two men trying to steal a woman's car. As he approaches them, they open fire on him. Paul quickly draws his weapon and shoots the driver. The second man steps out and fires at Paul, causing Paul's gun to fall from his hand. He blindly shoots back, unable to aim properly. Meanwhile, from a nearby window, a girl is recording the entire incident on her phone. Paul picks up his gun again and this time shoots the second attacker with a clean and accurate shot. He checks the train platform nearby and discovers the second robber was already dead before his last shot. He immediately flees, changes his clothes, and boards the train. Police arrive at the crime scene, and the girl shows them the video she recorded. Paul's face is not visible, but his wounded hand can be clearly seen. Because of that detail, investigators begin searching for suspects with injuries on their hands. When Paul returns home, he quickly cleans his wound and wraps it in a bandage. Later that night, while watching the news, Paul learns that the men he killed belonged to one of the city's most dangerous gangs. The video spreads across the entire city, and people begin to see the hooded man as a hero. After this, the hooded figure carries out a series of killings so intense that not only the local gangs, but even the FBI feel the pressure to track him down. The next day, while Paul is talking to a nurse, two police officers approach him. Paul hides his injured hand in his pocket and continues his secret mission, but he is still far from reaching the true gang responsible. He realizes he must reach the gang leader at any cost. One day, everything changes when a new patient is brought to the hospital. As Paul examines him, he suddenly notices the patient is wearing his daughter's watch, the same watch he gifted her on her birthday. He also spots a tattoo on the patient's hand. Paul remembers seeing this same man outside the restaurant on the night of the attack. He tries his best to save him, but despite all his efforts, the patient dies. Paul then goes to check the ambulance that brought him in. Inside, he finds the patient's phone. He returns to the body and uses the dead man's fingerprint to unlock it. Sitting in his office, Paul scrolls through the phone and discovers his own home address, sent that night by the same man to someone named Richard. He also finds the address of Richard's shop. Determined, Paul decides to go there. Just then, his friend Frank walks into the room unexpectedly. Seeing Paul's tense behavior, Frank asks if he is hiding something. Paul smartly avoids the question. After Frank leaves, Paul heads outside, takes a hoodie from the hospital waste bin, and prepares to leave. He had been collecting these hoodies for his nightly missions. When he reaches Richard's shop, he asks for Richard by name, but the men inside are professionals too. Richard notices a hospital tag stuck to the inside of Paul's hoodie, a tag that only comes from clothing taken off dead bodies. He immediately realizes that Paul is pretending to be someone he's not. Richard keeps Paul distracted with conversation while secretly texting his partner, Fish. "Come quickly, something might go wrong." Richard then grabs a revolver, but Paul sees everything reflected in a nearby mirror. Paul quickly picks up a metal rod from the table and strikes Richard's hand, forcing him to drop the gun. Paul then holds Richard at gunpoint and drags him into another room. Paul says, "You have two options. Tell me who was with you that night and where they are now." Just then, Fish calls Richard's phone. Paul asks, "Who is this Fish?" Richard replies that Fish was the one with him on the night of the home invasion. Paul says, "Good, I'll kill you first, then your friend Fish. But before that, you will return everything you stole from my house." Richard opens his locker and hands Paul the money and the ring he had stolen from Lucy. Meanwhile, Fish arrives outside the shop with his gun loaded and ready. He is about to enter, but Paul sees him on the CCTV monitor and quickly moves out of the line of fire. Fish spots Paul and immediately tries to shoot, but the bullet hits Richard in the head instead. Richard dies on the spot with a single shot. Paul fires back and Fish runs, slipping in Richard's blood and falling hard. Paul reaches him and strikes him in the face with a guitar. When Paul tries to shoot again, one of his bullets jams. Fish quickly gets up, hides behind the counter, and starts firing at Paul. Paul checks the CCTV monitor and uses it to aim. He shoots Fish directly in the leg. Paul walks toward him and presses his foot on Fish's injured leg. He asks, "How many others were with you that night?" Fish refuses to answer and kicks Paul instead. Fish then grabs another hidden gun strapped to his leg and fires at Paul. As he charges forward, a heavy metal weight hanging above falls straight onto his head. The impact causes his own gun to go off, killing him instantly. Since Fish reveals nothing, Paul takes his phone and leaves the shop. He copies the CCTV footage footage and brings it home. As soon as he arrives, he searches how to completely destroy a hard drive. After reviewing the footage, he crushes the hard drive with a steel machine so the police will find no evidence of his actions. Meanwhile, every time Paul eliminates a gang member, the news broadcasts a photo of the hooded vigilante. But instead of fearing him, people begin to admire him. The men he kills were all dangerous criminals, so the city views him as a hero. The next morning, detectives Ryan and Jackson visit Paul at his office. They show him a photo of Fish, who died the previous night. They tell him that Fish was one of the criminals who attacked Paul's home because Paul's wife's gold ring was found near Fish's body. Paul is shocked because he had taken that ring back from Richard himself. But when he left after killing Fish, the ring must have slipped out of his pocket. The detectives ask Paul if he recognizes the men. Paul tells them he knows nothing about them. However, he now understands that all these men were connected to the same gang. The real leader is still out there, and Paul is determined to find him. Using Fish's phone, Paul traces the address of another man named Charles. Charles is the same person Camilla stabbed in the face on the night of the attack. Paul goes to confirm if it's him. Without saying a word, Paul picks up a heavy wrench and strikes Charles hard, knocking him unconscious. When Charles wakes up, he finds his hands and feet tied, with Paul sitting in front of him. Charles pleads, "Who are you? What do you get by killing me?" Paul doesn't respond. Instead, he forces Charles's head back and punches him violently. He then grabs a metal plate and hits him again with full force. Paul asks, "Who else was with you that night? Who was Paul and who was their leader?" But Charles couldn't understand what night Paul was talking about. He said, "Hey, I don't even know you." But Paul then picks up battery acid and starts pouring it onto Charles's severed body and asks him one final time. Charles realizes that Paul is talking about the night they committed the murder. To save himself, he reveals the name of their boss and pleads for his life. But Paul pulls a chain from his wrist and a metal rocket-shaped weight drops from above, smashing Charles's head completely. Meanwhile, the investigating officer visits Paul's friend, Frank, hoping to learn something about Paul. Paul hasn't been showing up for his regular hospital shifts and has been seen often with the man in the hoodie. But Frank insists that Paul is completely normal. He says Paul could never kill anyone under any circumstances. That night, as Paul sits with his daughter, Charles's phone rings. Paul ignores it, but then a message arrives. It says that if Paul doesn't pick up the call, Charles will reveal where Paul was last night. Paul realizes this must be the gang leader he has been hunting, so Paul answers the call and tells the man to meet him the next day as planned. Paul goes to a bar while Frank visits Paul's house looking for him, but when he enters, he's completely shocked. The entire room is wrecked, and he finds guns and ammunition scattered around. It doesn't take long for him to understand that Paul is actually a dangerous killer hiding behind an innocent persona. Meanwhile, Paul texts the number and receives a reply. The message says the person is in the bathroom. Paul heads toward the bathroom and calls the number. As soon as the phone rings, Paul fires repeatedly at the direction of the sound. But when the door opens, Paul realizes he has been tricked. There was only a phone inside and the real leader is standing behind him. The leader opens fire, forcing Paul to roll into the bathroom and slam the door shut. Seeing an opening, Paul suddenly pushes the door, steps out, and shoots the gang leader twice in the stomach. But more gang members arrive and start firing at Paul. As the shots increase, Paul hits the electrical circuit above them, causing a sudden power failure. Using the chaos, he escapes and blends into the crowd. The gang leader's name is Clocks. He is the spoiled son of a wealthy businessman who does whatever he wants. That's why he formed this gang and started committing crimes. Now, news reaches FBI headquarters that the hooded vigilante has shot the son of a powerful businessman. Jackson and Ryan head to the hospital to see him. There they learn that Clocks is still alive, but he refuses to tell the officers anything. Meanwhile, Paul reaches his hideout and begins treating his wounds. Then he applies super glue to seal the cuts. Once it dries, he closes the wounds using a stapler. When he returns home, he finds Frank waiting in his room. Frank tells him that what he's doing is wrong. He reminds him that there is a legal way to bring criminals to justice. But Paul refuses to listen. He says, "Just stay quiet about what you know. I'll stop when I finish this." The next day, when Camilla is discharged from the hospital, Paul takes his daughter and heads home. Inside the same elevator, the gang leader, Chloe, appears. He tells Camilla, "You're very lucky to be alive after everything you went through." Camilla doesn't recognize him because everyone was wearing masks that day. Chloe then tells Paul, "You're lucky you survived after being shot twice." Because his daughter was present, Paul avoids reacting. He stays calm and exits the elevator. Camilla then asks Paul, "How do you know he got shot twice?" Paul replies he was my patient, but deep down, Paul already knew what the gang planned for that night and what dangers were coming. When they reach home, Paul has dinner with Frank and Camilla. After finishing the meal, he sends Frank home. Paul then hides Camilla inside a cabinet under the stairs and tells her not to come out until he says so. Paul steps outside and waits in silence. Soon, Chloe's gang begins entering Paul's house one by one. The first attacker walks in and fires at the bed, but he finds only a pillow and a bag. bag, realizing the bed was a decoy. At that moment, Paul appears nearby in a suit and shoots him in the head. Hearing the gunshot, another gang member rushes in. Paul shoots him as well, and the man falls with a broken neck. Now it is the gang leader, Chloe's turn. As Paul steps forward, Chloe appears from behind and shoots Paul in the arm. Paul collapses onto the couch, wounded. Chloe then says, "I killed your wife that day. I let you live only so I could kill your daughter in front of you later. I didn't get the chance to do what I wanted that day." He mocks Paul and asks who will save him and his daughter now. Hearing this, Paul kicks the table. A hidden machine gun rises up, and Paul unleashes a storm of bullets at Chloe. He fires repeatedly, tearing Chloe's body apart. This is where Chloe's life ends. Just then, the police arrive at Paul's house. This time, they catch him red-handed. The same two FBI officers also show up and arrest him, along with all the weapons used in the incident. But in the final scene, we see Paul escaping from prison. On the road, he spots someone and makes a handgun gesture with his hand. It hints that a second part might be coming, or maybe another leader is still alive, someone Paul was intentionally freed to eliminate.